Hey, pizza girl, are you deaf or just stupid? Aaliyah stopped in the middle of the executive corridor, the thermal bag weighing on her back. The man in the gray suit stared at her impatiently, pointing at the conference room door. The food was supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. Can't you people even deliver pizza? Right. Aaliyah felt her face burn. At 28 years old, she had heard worse insults, but something about that day was different. The air on the 47th floor of Harrison and Burke felt charged with electricity. People were running through the hallways. Phones rang incessantly. Someone was shouting somewhere. "I'm sorry, sir. The service elevator was having problems." "I don't care." He cut her off. "Leave it there and disappear." Aaliyah, the dark-skinned black delivery woman, took a deep breath. Her long braids swayed as she lowered her head and pushed open the conference room door. What she saw inside made her heart race. A huge table surrounded by panicked executives. Papers scattered everywhere. A screen showing red graphs. And at the center of it all, a blonde woman in high heels screaming into a phone. "I don't care if the translator is in the hospital. The call with Dubai is in 15 minutes. If we lose this contract, we lose everything." But what happened next? Nobody in that room could have predicted what the pizza girl was about to do. Aaliyah recognized the woman, Victoria Burke, founding partner of the company. Her face was on every business magazine Aaliyah flipped through at newsstands while waiting for deliveries. "Excuse me," Aaliyah murmured, placing the pizzas on the side table. Nobody looked at her. It was as if she were invisible. "Does anyone here speak Arabic?" Victoria asked desperately. "Anyone at all?" Silence. "Sheikh al-Rashid only negotiates in Arabic. You know that we spent 8 months building this relationship, and now..." The phone rang. The sound cut through the air like a knife. "It's him," said an executive, his face white as paper. "They're calling from Dubai." Victoria closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, Aaliyah saw something she never expected to see on such a powerful woman's face. Fear. Pure fear. The phone kept ringing. Aaliyah looked at the door. She should leave. It wasn't her problem. She was just the pizza girl, a dark-skinned black delivery woman who earned tips to pay her overdue rent. But her hands wouldn't move, because she understood every word the nervous executive was trying to read from the paper. The formal Arabic greeting he was pronouncing completely wrong. Aaliyah closed her eyes for a moment. She saw her grandmother Fatima's face, smelled the cardamom from her kitchen in Detroit, heard her soft voice correcting Aaliyah's pronunciation when she was 7 years old. "Ya Habibi, the Arabic language is music. You don't speak it, you sing it." Her grandmother had come from Morocco at 19. She had raised 6 children speaking Arabic at home. She had taught Aaliyah since she was a baby, while her mother worked 2 jobs. Aaliyah opened her eyes. The phone was still ringing. Victoria Burke stared at the device as if it were a bomb about to explode. And then, without thinking, Aaliyah stepped forward. "I speak Arabic." Every head turned. The silence that followed was the heaviest Aaliyah had ever experienced. Victoria looked her up and down. The thermal bag, the red pizzeria uniform, the braids, the black skin. "You..." The tone was pure disbelief. "The pizza delivery girl?" Aaliyah felt each word like a slap, but she didn't back down. "My grandmother was Moroccan," she said firmly. "I learned Arabic before I learned English." The phone rang for the 5th time. Victoria hesitated. She looked at the executives around her. They all seemed as lost as she was. "This is ridiculous," someone muttered. The phone rang for the 6th time. Victoria took a deep breath. "Answer it," she told Aaliyah. Aaliyah picked up the phone with steady hands. All eyes were on her, the dark-skinned black delivery woman holding the fate of a $100 million contract. "Assalamu alaikum," Aaliyah said clearly. This is Harrison and Burke. With whom do I have the pleasure of speaking? The response came in formal Arabic, fast, heavy with a Gulf accent. An aide to Sheikh al-Rashid, verifying if someone was available for the meeting. Aaliyah responded without hesitation. Her Arabic flowed naturally, with a respectful tone her grandmother Fatima had hammered into her for 20 years. In the room, no one understood a word, but everyone noticed something. The pizza girl knew what she was doing. Victoria Burke watched with narrowed eyes, arms crossed over her chest. The call lasted 3 minutes. When Aaliyah hung up, the silence was absolute. "The sheikh will call in 40 minutes, Aaliyah translated. The aide said he's finishing another meeting. He asked if we would have an adequate interlocutor available. And what did you answer? Victoria asked tensely. That yes, that will be ready. An executive let out a nervous laugh. This is insane. We're going to put a pizza delivery girl to negotiate with an Arab billionaire? Aaliyah felt her blood boil, but maintained composure. Her grandmother always said, "Whoever shouts has already lost the battle. Whoever speaks softly controls the room." "I won't negotiate," Aaliyah said calmly. "I'll translate. You negotiate. I just give voice." Victoria studied the young black woman's face for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Aaliyah." "Aaliyah Thompson." "Thompson?" An executive frowned. "Doesn't sound like an Arabic name. My mother is American. My father was African American. My grandmother was Moroccan." Aaliyah didn't look away. "I'm what happens when 3 worlds meet." Victoria nodded slowly. "You have 40 minutes to show me you know what you're talking about. If I notice any hesitation, any mistake, you're out." Aaliyah swallowed hard, but maintained her posture. "Understood." The next 40 minutes were the most intense of Aaliyah's life. Victoria put her in a smaller room with 2 legal advisors. They threw documents full of technical terms in front of her. Contract clauses, profit margins, delivery deadlines, penalties. "Can you translate this?" one of the advisors asked skeptically. Aaliyah looked at the papers. Some words were complicated, legal terms she had never seen. But she had something no one in that room possessed. 20 years of listening to her grandmother translate import contracts for Moroccan merchants in Detroit. Fatima Thompson wasn't just a loving grandmother. She was a businesswoman who had run a spice import network for 3 decades. And she had taught Aaliyah not just the language, but the art of Arab negotiation. "The sheikh will start with light conversation," Aaliyah said while reviewing the documents. "He'll ask about family, about health, about the weather. This isn't a waste of time. It's building trust." The advisor raised his eyebrows. "How do you know that?" "Because my grandmother negotiated with men like him her whole life." Aaliyah pointed to a clause in the contract. "And this part here is going to be a problem. You're asking for payment in 60 days. In the Gulf, the standard is 90. He'll find it disrespectful." Victoria, who had entered silently, stopped behind Aaliyah. "How do you know about payment terms in the Gulf?" Aaliyah turned to face her. "My grandmother died 2 years ago. She left an import business that I tried to keep running." Her voice faltered for an instant. "I couldn't. I lost everything. That's why I'm delivering pizza." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It wasn't judgment. It was understanding. Victoria pulled up a chair and sat next to Aaliyah. "Tell me more about this clause." In the next 20 minutes, Aaliyah explained cultural nuances that no MBA taught. The value of starting meetings with personal questions, the importance of never interrupting, the weight of a verbal promise in Arab culture. The executives took notes frantically. "Why have you never worked with this?" one of them asked. "Corporate translation pays very well." Aaliyah shrugged, but her eyes told another story. "I tried. I sent résumés to dozens of companies." She smoothed her red pizzeria uniform. But nobody hires a translator who doesn't have a university degree. It doesn't matter if I speak 3 languages fluently. Without the paper, I'm invisible. Victoria opened her mouth to say something, but the room phone rang. It was the call from Dubai. Sheikh Al-Rashid was on the line. Aaliyah, the dark-skinned black delivery woman with long braids and a pizzeria uniform, looked at Victoria Burke. "Ready?" Victoria asked. Aaliyah thought of her grandmother, of the kitchen smelling of cardamom, of the nights studying Arabic while other children watched television, of the years of invisible struggle. "I was born ready," she answered. What happened next would change everything. Not just for Aaliyah, but for everyone in that room. Sheikh Al-Rashid's voice filled the room through the speakerphone. It was a deep voice, measured, loaded with authority. He began exactly as Aaliyah had predicted, asking about Victoria's health, about her family, about the weather in New York. Aaliyah translated each word precisely, maintaining the respectful tone the occasion required. Victoria responded following the instructions Aaliyah had given minutes before. Calmly, kindly, without rush. The executives around the table barely breathed. 15 minutes passed in light conversation. Some in the room started getting impatient, but Aaliyah knew this was essential. In Arab culture, business didn't happen between strangers. It happened between people who trusted each other. Finally, the sheikh changed his tone. "Now about the contract," he said in Arabic. "I have some concerns." Aaliyah translated. Victoria nodded and signaled to the legal advisor. What followed was a delicate dance. The sheikh questioned clauses, deadlines, guarantees. Victoria responded, and Aaliyah translated, but not just the words. She translated intentions, softened terms that might sound aggressive, added expressions of respect where direct English failed. Then came the payment deadline clause. 60 days is unacceptable, the sheikh said, his voice colder. This suggests distrust, as if you expected me not to keep my word. Aaliyah translated. Victoria went pale. "We can adjust to 90 days, Victoria said quickly. Aaliyah was about to translate when the sheikh continued speaking. "Who is this translator? Her voice is familiar to me." Aaliyah felt her heart stop. Victoria looked at her confused. "He wants to know who you are," she whispered. Aaliyah took a deep breath. "My name is Aaliyah Thompson," she said in Arabic. "I'm just a temporary assistant." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Thompson," the sheikh repeated slowly. "Is your family from Detroit?" Aaliyah's blood ran cold. "Yes, sir." "Are you the granddaughter of Fatima Al-Fars?" The entire room seemed to shrink. The executives looked at each other without understanding. Victoria frowned. "Yes," Aaliyah answered, her voice almost a whisper. "She was my grandmother." The sheikh let out a long exhale. "Fatima Al-Fars saved my family 40 years ago." The silence that followed was absolute. Aaliyah felt tears forming, but held them back. "I was young," the sheikh continued in Arabic. "My father had just died. Powerful men wanted to take our business. No one would help us." He paused. "Except a Moroccan merchant in Detroit who gave us credit when everyone else closed their doors. Fatima Al-Fars." Aaliyah vaguely remembered a story her grandmother used to tell about a family from the Gulf she had helped decades ago. She never imagined it was this family. "My grandmother never mentioned your name," Aaliyah said in Arabic. She used to say that helping others wasn't something to keep in memory. It was something to keep in the heart. The sheikh laughed softly. "She used to say exactly that, word for word." Victoria touched Aaliyah's arm. "What's happening?" she whispered. Aaliyah couldn't respond. Tears now flowed freely down the young black woman's face. The sheikh spoke again. "Aaliyah, granddaughter of Fatima, are you working for this company?" Aaliyah looked at her red delivery uniform, at the thermal bag abandoned in the corner of the room. No, sir. I was just delivering pizza. A moment of silence. Then the sheik did something no one expected. He laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. The granddaughter of Fatima Al-Fars, delivering pizza in New York. He sighed. The world is sometimes cruel to the wrong people. Victoria made frantic signals for Aaliyah to translate. He said that. Aaliyah began. Miss Burke, the sheik interrupted, now in heavily accented English. I understand more than I appear to. Victoria's eyes went wide. The sheik continued. I will sign your contract, but I have one condition. Victoria straightened her posture. What condition? Aaliyah Thompson will be responsible for all communication between our companies. She will be our bridge. If she is not part of the deal, there is no deal. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria looked at Aaliyah, the dark-skinned black delivery woman with long braids, still wearing the red pizzeria uniform. Aaliyah, in turn, couldn't process what she was hearing. Sheik Victoria said carefully, Aaliyah is not an employee of our company. Then hire her, he responded simply, or find another company for your business in Dubai. One of the executives, the same one who had called Aaliyah Pizza Girl in the corridor, choked on his own coffee. Victoria took a deep breath. Aaliyah, she said, looking directly at her, would you accept working with us? Aaliyah felt the weight of years of invisible struggle. The nights studying while working 2 jobs, the ignored résumés, the doors slammed in her face. The time she heard she wasn't qualified, didn't have the profile, wasn't what they were looking for. And now, one of the largest consulting firms in the country was asking if she would accept working with them. Because of a call she almost didn't answer. Because of a grandmother she thought she had lost forever. Yes, Aaliyah said. I accept. From the other end of the line, Sheikh Al-Rashid said his final words in Arabic. Fatima would be proud of you, Habibi. Aaliyah smiled through her tears. I know she is. The call ended at 4:47 p.m. Aaliyah stood in the same spot for a long moment, the phone still in her hand. Around her, executives looked at each other, not knowing how to react. Victoria Burke was the first to move. Everyone out, she said firmly. I need 5 minutes with Aaliyah. Alone. The room emptied in seconds. The executive who had insulted her in the corridor passed by without being able to raise his eyes. When the door closed, Victoria pulled up a chair and sat in front of Aaliyah. Do you realize what just happened? Aaliyah, the young dark-skinned black woman, shook her head slowly. I'm still processing. Victoria crossed her hands over her knees. For 8 months, my entire team was working on this contract. The best lawyers, the best negotiators, consultants from Dubai who charged a fortune. She paused, and in 40 minutes, you did what none of them could. Aaliyah didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. It wasn't just the Arabic, Victoria continued. It was the way you spoke, the way you understood the culture, the way you made him trust. Aaliyah thought of her grandmother, of the endless afternoons in her kitchen, practicing pronunciation while Fatima prepared dinner, of the stories about merchants from Morocco, about honor, about the importance of keeping one's word. My grandmother used to say that language isn't just vocabulary, Aaliyah said finally. It's soul. When you speak someone's language, you're not just communicating, you're respecting. Victoria nodded slowly. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She was the wisest woman I ever knew. Victoria stood and walked to the window. The afternoon sun painted New York golden. When you sent résumés to translation companies, was mine one of them? Aaliyah hesitated. Yes, 3 times in the last 2 years. Victoria closed her eyes for a moment. And we never called you for an interview. Never. The silence between them weighed like lead. You know what's most ironic? Victoria turned to face her. We have an entire department dedicated to finding diverse talent. We spend millions on inclusion programs. And the most qualified person I've ever seen for this role was delivering pizza in my building. Aaliyah felt a pang in her chest, not of anger, but of something more complicated. Something that felt like validation and sadness at the same time. I don't want a job out of pity, she said firmly. Or out of guilt. Victoria smiled for the first time since everything had started. Aaliyah, you just saved a $100 million contract. Sheikh Al-Rashid personally demanded that you be part of the deal. She crossed her arms. That's not pity. That's merit. 1 week later, Aaliyah entered the same building where she had delivered pizzas. But this time, she wasn't wearing the red uniform. She wore a navy blue blazer she had bought with her last delivery paycheck. Her long braids were pulled back in an elegant bun. Her badge read, Aaliyah Thompson, Director of International Communications. The security guard, who barely used to look at her now, greeted her by name. Good morning, Miss Thompson. Aaliyah smiled. Good morning, Marcus. In the elevator, she thought about calling her mother, but she decided to wait. She wanted to tell her in person. She wanted to see her face when she found out. She wanted her to understand that all those sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the 2 jobs, the years of struggle, had been worth it. 3 months later, Aaliyah flew to Dubai for the first time. Sheikh Al-Rashid received her personally in his office. On his desk, there was an old black and white photograph. Aaliyah recognized it immediately. It was her grandmother, Fatima, young, smiling, standing in front of a small store in Detroit. She gave me this photo in 1985, the sheikh said. The day she gave me credit when no one else would. I was a scared boy trying to save my dead father's business. She was a woman who barely knew me. He touched the frame with reverence. And yet, she trusted me. Aaliyah felt the tears returning. She never told me the complete story. Because your grandmother didn't help people to be remembered. The sheikh looked directly at her. She helped because that's who she was. Aaliyah gently touched the photo. I wish so much that she could see this. See where I am now. The sheikh smiled. Habibi, she can see. I'm certain of it. 1 year later, Aaliyah created a scholarship program for young people from marginalized communities who wanted to study languages and international business. She called it the Fatima Foundation. At the inauguration ceremony, her mother cried. Victoria Burke gave a speech. Sheikh Al-Rashid sent a video message from Dubai. But the most important moment came afterward, when Aaliyah stood alone on stage. She looked at the audience, full of young people, many of them black and brown, many of them from families like hers. My grandmother taught me that language is a bridge, Aaliyah said into the microphone. But she also taught me something more important, that a person's value isn't in the diploma they have or the uniform they wear. She paused. A year ago, I was invisible. I delivered pizza in buildings where people like me only entered through the service door. And then one day, I had the chance to show who I really was. She looked at her hands. The same hands that carried pizza boxes that now signed international contracts. Many of you are where I was, fighting to be seen, fighting to prove you deserve a chance. Aaliyah smiled. I'm here to tell you that you do deserve it, and that sometimes the bridge that will change your life is built with something you already have inside you. She took a deep breath. My grandmother Fatima planted a seed in me when I was a child. A seed made of words, stories, love. She didn't live to see that seed bloom. But I know that somehow, she's here. Aaliyah touched her chest. Because what the people who love us teach us never dies. It lives in every word we speak, in every bridge we build, in every door we open for those who come after us. The audience gave a standing ovation. And somewhere, Aaliyah was certain, her grandmother Fatima was smiling. If this story touched you, remember, talent has no uniform. Value has no appearance. And sometimes, The person who will change everything is right in front of you, just waiting for someone to finally see them. Subscribe to Heartline Stories for more stories that prove never underestimate someone you don't yet know.